I've spent the past 2 years playing and ranking every Naruto game that came out in the West. I'm sure you've seen a lot of these top 10 list videos for the 10 best Naruto games or the 10 best Naruto fighting games, stuff like that. But did the people who make those videos actually play through all of them? Maybe. Maybe not. So let's just call this a definitive list, and today I am focusing on story modes. The best story modes to play through, be it because of cutscenes, voice acting, writing, or just cool gameplay moments. Let's dive right in, and hey, if you'd like to see more of these list videos, make sure to subscribe. I don't know if I'm doing more, this is a bit of an experiment. Let's see how it goes. At number 10, we've got Naruto Shippuden Clash of Ninja Revolution 3. This is a fighting game story mode, so a lot of the missions are gonna be 1v1 battles. But given what the game is, I think they did a really good job keeping this story mode varied with different fighting formats. Not only do you fight 1v1, you also fight 2-on-1 or 3-on-1, depending on what the story demands. There's also tag battles, and my personal favorite was the Might Guy mirror match, which was literally a mirror match. The CPU actually mirrors all of your inputs. So for a second, this turns into more of a puzzle game rather than a fighting game. Figuring out this encounter was really fun. The story follows the Shippuden canon from the moment Naruto returns to the village until the end of the Kazekage rescue arc, ending in the famous boss fight against Deidara, which was definitely a challenge. You might remember I made a video on that, it took me over 30 tries, but the toughest part about that boss fight is that you have to finish it with a secret technique, and landing that on Deidara definitely proved challenging. The whole thing is voice acted, but the cutscenes are fairly basic, and it is in the end a fighting game story mode, so not something exquisitely crafted. So it's good, but it's gonna be our number 10. At number 9, we've got Ultima Ninja Impact. We went from fully voiced 3D cutscenes to fully voiced visual novel style cutscenes. So at first, it may seem like a downgrade, but trust me, it is not. Impact came out on PSP and some of the platform's limitations definitely show, but CyberConnect 2 did a lot to make this such an enjoyable story to play through. And it is absolutely massive, covering the Shippuden story from when Naruto returns to the village to Naruto vs Sasuke in the 5 Kage Summit arc. But what makes this story mode so good isn't the size or the visual novel cutscenes, it's the gameplay moments. This is the only Naruto Warriors type game there is, and each playable character has a really cool moveset for you to learn. So every time you jump into a mission with a new character, it's just fun to discover what they can do. On top of that, you have a bunch of unique boss fights. It's not Storm quality, but for PSP it's pretty good. And every character and boss comes with cutscenes that are just wonderful to look at, complete with quick time events and everything. The one downside to this story mode is that it can drag quite a bit sometimes. There's a lot of padding, a lot of filler missions that aren't that fun to play through. For instance, when Naruto is training to master the wind chakra nature, Kakashi tells you to defeat 100 shadow clones. And this takes a while and it's not necessarily fun, but when you're done, Kakashi actually says, cool, now do 200. And there's a ton of unnecessary filler like that that doesn't add much to the experience, so it's a cool story mode, but we'll keep it down here at number 9. At number 8, we've got Naruto Ultima Ninja 3, a game that covers the entire pre-skip Naruto in sort of an abridged way. You jump from fight to fight and the whole thing is voiced, and you've got some dialogue scenes as well as full CG cutscenes, which if you're looking at these today, they might not look graphically impressive anymore, but in my opinion the camera angles, the action shots, all of that holds up extremely well. Gameplay wise, it's just a series of 1v1 battles, there's the occasional boss fight, but nothing too special, so not the most interesting thing, and the game did lose its free roaming from previously. You just play through story mode by jumping from menu to menu. Except they took that free roaming and made it 1,000 times better, only in a separate game mode. There still hasn't been a single Naruto game that gives you the freedom of movement that this game does. The fact that you can simply jump and attach to any wall in Konoha was never done since Ultima Ninja 3. There's always some pre-made walls that you can climb, but it's never every wall. I love this free roaming to this day. And this game mode didn't just feature 1v1 battles, it also had minigames to keep things fresh. The problem with this mode was the story itself, because it sucks. Which means they have one mode with a good story, which is the Naruto story, but no free roaming and very little gameplay variety. And then another mode with a bad story, but good free roaming and some gameplay variety. They split the best their game had to offer into 2 different modes, and that's why it's kinda low on my list. This could have been a lot higher if all of it just came out together, and it did eventually, but we'll talk about it when we get there. But first, our number 7, Path of the Ninja. This was the first big surprise of the ranking for me. I was not expecting to like Path of the Ninja as much as I did when I first picked it up. And a big part of that was the actual story. It follows the Naruto story starting with Kakashi training all the way to the end of the Chunin exam arc, with Gaara being the final boss fight. And what made it so good for me was the writing. It's very good. It's funny when you least expect it, get slapped Naruto, just be quiet, and also how much detail they go into without making things boring. There were several moments moments in dialogue that I had completely forgotten actually happened in the show because they didn't feel like major moments. But this game remembers all of that, and it was awesome to see it in such a different context. I actually liked the RPG systems they built as well, so I had fun playing through it as well. Solid number 7. And number 6, the sequel to Ultima Ninja 3, it's Ultima Ninja 4. The free roaming was upgraded, they dropped Naruto into a much bigger area with a lot more movement options than before and even some platforming challenges. They did lose the free-form wall climbing, which I do wish was still there, but other than that everything was just better. It starts with a filler story, which I don't think it was awesome, but it's during these sections that you get the most interesting platforming levels. It takes about 2.5 hours to clear, and from there the Shippuden story actually begins. And you keep all of those movement abilities while being able to explore Konoha, the hidden sand village, and all the spaces in between. This is a huge space and it did give me a sense of scale for the first time when it comes to the Naruto world. This whole story mode is paired up with amazing cutscenes. The one thing that stains this experience is the end. The game stops right in the middle of rescuing the Kazekage. The last battle is Naruto versus Itachi, right in the middle of that arc. So Ultima Ninja 4 will always feel like an incomplete game to me, but it's a lot of fun while it lasts. And number 5, we have yet another big surprise for me. It's Naruto Powerful Shippuden. This is by far the funniest Naruto game I've ever played, inspired by the Rock Lee spin-off series. It's a beat 'em up that really shines through with its writing and humor. The story starts at the beginning of Shippuden up to Naruto vs Sasuke at the 5 Kage Summit arc. And it's a very abridged story where retelling the events of what happened isn't the priority. The priority is to make you laugh, and it succeeds at doing that extremely well. It's got a decent mission variety too, with a lot of abilities to unlock. Some of them are actual abilities, others are more on the comedic side, like Rock Lee throwing his own eyebrows instead of shuriken. This is a game that Naruto fans need to experience at least once. It is just that funny. And number 4, we have a fan favorite, Naruto Broken Bond, which a lot of fans would probably put at number 1 on this list, and I can definitely see why. Broken Bond is amazing. As the sequel to Rise of a Ninja, it kept the free roaming, the exploration, and just added a ton of characters. The best part of this series to me is how they handle the story missions, by giving you unique activities that fit the moment. Not only the battles, but the moments in between the battles as well. For instance, being stuck in Itachi's Tsukuyomi as Sasuke, having to relive the moment your parents got killed. Or the minigames you have to clear as Naruto to learn the Rasengan. This game has one of the strongest openings I've seen in a Naruto game. It starts with Orochimaru versus the 3rd Hokage, and the fight itself is awesome, but even more impressive is perhaps what comes afterwards. A village in grief over the loss of the 3rd Hokage, the whole atmosphere, the movement on Naruto, everything, reinforcing the importance of this moment. And then it jumps to filler. This game could really be the number 1 on my list of story modes if it wasn't for the amount of filler it has. It's actually most of the game. This has more filler than canon story. And even though they've got more playable characters and their abilities help while exploring or doing side missions, there are some where they just ran out of ideas on what to do with them, so they make up more filler to make them feel relevant. And that's why this is the number 4 on my list. It's still a very respectable number, but it's not higher and in my opinion not better than its predecessor, Rise of a Ninja, which is not our number 3, because that's Ultima Ninja 5. So Ultima Ninja 5 came out extremely close to Ultima Ninja 4, like months later. They both came out in 2009. So a lot of the open world exploration and the world itself is exactly the same. And they're still awesome, only this time it doesn't feel like the game is unfinished. The story is a bit shorter than most of the other Naruto games on this list, as it only goes from the start of Shippuden to Sasuke vs Team 7 at the Orochimaru hideout, but it's packed with side activities and an entire world to discover. So it actually doesn't feel smaller than most of the other games on this list. This game only has one downside for me, but it's a pretty big one. It was only released in Japan and Europe. Back in the PlayStation 2 era, there were 2 standards for television. Japan and North America had the NTSC standard, which ran games at 60 FPS, and Europe had the PAL standard, which ran games at 50 FPS. I know, it sucks, but what sucks even more was that CC2 never did a good job porting those games over from 60 to 50 FPS. They just slowed down the action, and it all feels pretty terrible if you're playing the European version. So if you want to play this game, you've got 2 options. 1, you play the Japanese version if you understand Japanese, or 2, you play the European version in an emulator and make the emulator speed 110%, so it feels closer to the 60 FPS game that they released in Japan. Still, performance doesn't really come into play in this top 10, and this story mode, when it's running well, it's just wonderful. And number 2, we have Naruto Rise of a Ninja at last, what can I say about this game? The whole point of Rise of a Ninja was being an awesome retelling of Naruto. It's an action adventure and they paid such close attention to detail when giving you certain gameplay segments just to fit the story better. There are a ton of minigames or unique moments throughout the story that probably make this the best retelling of those arcs in Naruto. It's also accompanied by the original soundtrack and the occasional cutscene taken from the original anime, which by the way, I love how they mixed those in with gameplay. And let's not forget Konoha. It just feels so complete and so very much alive. Rise of a Ninja is easily one of the best story modes in Naruto. And at the number 1, you already know what's left. It's Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 and 3 and 4. What's that? I can't put 3 games together at the number 1? Says who? These 3 story modes work as one continuous story, and yes, maybe putting the 3 of them together is cheating, but this way, no one's gonna argue that Rise of a Ninja is better than all of these 3 combined. And I mean no one. Anyway, you can free roam in Storm 2 and 3. You cannot free roam in Storm 4, but in my opinion, they leveled up a lot of the boss fights, and that final arc was animated for the first time in-game. That came out before the anime did the end of the manga, and they just did it perfectly. The scope of these games is gigantic, from the size of the areas you can travel around in, to the boss fight mechanics and even extra unique encounters. Now you may notice that I left the first Storm out of this because that story mode sucks. You can free roam and that's it. There's nothing to do in Konoha, you just run around and the story is told through text on screen, doesn't even come close to the storytelling, the wonderful cutscenes, the quick time events and boss fights that the sequels had. So yeah, maybe you had already played the best Naruto story modes out there, but I bet there were a couple of games on this list that you missed, and if you did, I guess that's something to keep an eye out for if you're interested. But what was your absolute favorite Naruto story mode to play through? If you could only choose one, which one would it be? And you cannot put all the Storm games together, like, who would do that? And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku and I'll see you next time. Bye!